I thought it would be just another ordinary afternoon, the kind you forget by the next morning. Instead, my dad did one quiet, unexpected thing that cracked open years of unspoken feelings and changed how I see him forever. What happened that day is something I know we'll never forget. Greetings, dear listeners. Before I begin telling this complicated story of my life, I ask you to support our channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and write in the comments which city you are listening from. This is very important for us. And now enjoy listening. I didn't wake up that morning expecting anything special. The sky outside my bedroom window was the dull gray of early spring. The kind that makes everything look unfinished, like the day itself hasn't decided what it wants to be yet. I lay there for a while, listening to the familiar sounds of our house. The old floorboards creaked as they always did, and somewhere downstairs, I heard the soft clink of a mug against the counter. That would be my dad, Robert. Already awake, already moving through his routine. Lisa. I'm 20 years old, and like a lot of people my age, I've been walking that strange line between meeting my parents and trying to prove I don't. My dad and I have always had a steady relationship, but not a dramatic one. He's not the kind of man who talks a lot about feelings. He shows up, fixes things, pays attention in quiet ways. Growing up, I learned to read him through actions rather than words. When I finally got out of bed, the house smelled like coffee and toast. That smell always takes me back to being a kid, sitting at the kitchen table with my feet swinging above the floor, watching my dad read the newspaper like the world couldn't interrupt him. I walked into the kitchen and saw him standing by the window, sunlight catching the gray in his hair. He looked older to me lately, and that thought brought a small sharp ache I didn't fully understand. "Morning, kiddo," he said without turning around. "Morning," I replied, grabbing a mug from the cabinet. Our hands brushed briefly as he passed me the coffee pot, and I noticed how rough his skin felt, how warm. It was such a small detail, but it stayed with me. We sat at the table together, the quiet comfortable, but also heavy in a way I couldn't explain. There was something in the air, like when a storm is coming, but the sky hasn't darkened yet. I told him about my classes, about how unsure I felt about what I was doing with my life. He nodded, listening, asking questions that showed he was really there with me. Still, there was something he wasn't saying, and I could feel it. After breakfast, he cleared his throat and said, "Hey, Lisa, do you have some time today? I thought maybe we could go for a drive." That surprised me. My dad doesn't usually suggest spontaneous outings. He's a planner, a man who likes knowing where he's going. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, sure." We drove out of town, past streets I knew by heart, and into quieter roads lined with bare trees and open fields. The car hummed beneath us, and the radio played softly, an old song I recognized but couldn't name. I watched my dad's hands on the steering wheel, steady and sure, and wondered where we were going. He finally pulled into a small, nearly empty parking lot near a park I hadn't visited in years. I remember coming here as a child, feeding ducks, and laughing as my dad pretended to chase them away. Seeing it again made my chest feel tight. We got out of the car and the air was cool and fresh. The park looked smaller than I remembered, but somehow more meaningful. We walked along a narrow path, our footsteps crunching against the gravel. I wanted to ask him why we were there, but something told me to wait. He stopped near a wooden bench overlooking a small pond. The water was calm, reflecting the sky like a mirror. My dad took a deep breath, then turned to face me. For a moment he didn't speak, and I saw something in his eyes that I rarely did. Vulnerability. "I don't always say things right," he began slowly. "And I know I haven't said enough over the years, but I want you to know how proud I am of you. Not just for what you do, but for who you are." I felt my throat tighten. Hearing those words spoken so plainly felt like a door opening inside me. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a letter written in his careful handwriting. He told me he'd been writing it for weeks, afraid he'd never find the right moment. As I read, my hands trembled. He wrote about watching me grow up, about his fears of not being enough as a father, about the joy he felt just knowing I was finding my own way. It wasn't dramatic or poetic, But it was honest, and that made it powerful. Standing there by the pond with the quiet world around us, I realized something important. My dad had always been there, loving me in the only way he knew how. And today, he chose to step out of his comfort zone to meet me where I was. I looked up at him, tears in my eyes, and smiled. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and connection. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever questions I still had about my life, I knew this was a day that would stay with me forever. We would never forget what happened because it changed us gently and completely. We stayed by the pond longer than I expected. After I finished reading the letter, I folded it carefully and held it against my chest as if pressing it closer might help the words sink deeper into me. My dad sat down on the bench, exhaling slowly like he just finished carrying something heavy for a very long distance. I sat beside him close enough that our shoulders almost touched. Close enough to feel that quiet reassurance that comes from simply being near someone who knows you. "I didn't know if I should give you that," he said, staring out at the water. I kept thinking maybe it was silly or too late. "It's not," I replied quickly, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "It's not too late at all." He nodded but didn't look at me right away. The breeze rippled across the pond, breaking the reflection of the sky into soft, shifting pieces. Ducks glided past, unaware of the small, life-altering moment happening just a few feet away. I realized then how many important things happened quietly without an audience, without applause. We talked for a long time after that, not in a dramatic confessional way, but in the gentle back and forth of two people finally giving themselves permission to be honest. He told me about his own father, a man who worked hard but rarely spoke about emotions, and how he promised himself he'd be different. Then he admitted with a small self-conscious smile that he wasn't always sure he succeeded. I told him things I hadn't planned to say. How lost I sometimes felt. How I worried about disappointing him even when he never gave me a reason to feel that way. How adulthood felt less like a doorway and more like a foggy field where I couldn't see more than a few steps ahead. He told me something that took me by surprise. "When you were little," he said, "you used to hold my hand wherever we went. Even when you didn't need to. I think I needed it more than you did." That hit me hard. I could clearly picture my small hand wrapped around his, the world feeling safe because he was there. I hadn't thought about that in years, and it made me realize how much we had both been carrying quietly, thinking the other was fine. Eventually we walked back to the car. The path felt different now, like we had both changed. On the drive home, the silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful, comfortable. When we got home, he surprised me again by asking if I wanted to help him cook dinner. Normally that was his thing. But we worked side by side in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, moving around each other with ease. As we cooked, he told me little stories from his past, nothing major, but enough to help me see him as more than just my father. He was Andrew, a man who had once been young, uncertain, and hopeful. That night, after dinner and cleaning up, I went to my room and read the letter again. Slowly this time, letting the words sink in. Each sentence felt like a thread stitching something back together inside me. The next morning everything felt different. The sunlight through the curtains seemed warmer, and I realized I had been so wrapped up in life that I'd never really seen what was right in front of me. When I walked into the kitchen, my dad looked up, and I noticed the way he smiled at me. It wasn't a polite, routine smile. It was softer, more open. We had breakfast together, and for the first time the conversation was easy. It wasn't forced, just a natural flow. Later my dad took a call, and I saw the way his posture shifted. He didn't say much, but when I asked him about it, he told me it was nothing to worry about. That moment made me realize something. Life doesn't stop, not even when something big happens. Bills need paying, decisions need to be made. I realized then how much my dad had been carrying silently, protecting me from things I didn't even know about. In the afternoon, we went through some old boxes in the garage. It was his idea, another surprise. He handed me a picture of us at the beach when I was 6, grinning like I had no worries in the world. "You were fearless," he said quietly. "I don't feel fearless now," I admitted. "That's okay," he replied. "Being brave doesn't mean not being afraid." It means showing up anyway. His words stuck with me. Felt like he was talking to me but also talking to himself. As the day went on, I saw how much effort my dad put into the little things. The way he double-checked the locks at night, made sure my car had gas, and listened more than he spoke. It made me see his love for me in a new light. That evening, as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset, I felt a wave of gratitude. "I'm really happy," I said suddenly. He looked at me, a little confused. Yeah, I replied. "I don't know where I'm going yet, but I feel grounded." He smiled, a deep, satisfied smile. "That's all I ever wanted for you." In that moment, I realized that this wasn't just about one day, one letter. It was about finally understanding the love between us. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was steady, honest, and always there. That's what had changed me. And that's why I'll never forget that day. It wasn't just a memory. It was a new beginning. Don't forget to subscribe to Secret Woman Stories. See you on the next one.